Hello and welcome to this new episode of Bootstrapping Your Dreams Show. I'm your host Manuj Aggarwal, and today we'll be talking to Joe DeMaria. So Joe is the founder of Teach to Scale, which is one of the most respected curriculum development houses on the planet, having worked to create dozens of courses for high-end entrepreneurs, coaches, and consultants around the world. He's also the founder of JAD Marketing, which houses world-class entrepreneurs, peak performers, coaches, speakers, maximize, innovate, and optimize their market and sales strategies. He has also been a CMO and the VP of sales in his previous roles and has numerous publications to his name. Today, he teaches coaches, consultants, and peak performers how to scale their businesses and their impact on their audiences through his company. Glad to have you on the show, Joe. Welcome.
Hey, thanks for having me, and a very, very nice intro. I'll have to live up to it.
I'm sure you will. So I know you have a very interesting story. You started working when you were like a baby. So let's start there. How did it all turn out? And take us down the memory lane. How did you get started?
Well, so my first semi-entrepreneurial venture was around when I was 9 years old or something like that. It was in elementary school. And it came about because there's all this stuff on the news about like school district-wide bans on sodas and on candy and all these different things, part of a healthier eating initiative or something like that. But what I did know is that the people that made that decision did not have their finger on the pulse of the market, because these kids were ravenous for that sort of thing. So, I was looking at it and going, well, there's now an unfilled need here. What can I do to sort of fill the gap? And I ended up starting to kind of steal sodas from my own house and candy from my own cupboards and take it into the school and start selling it. And I was making money, and other people were seeing me do that. So I started recruiting. And I had other kids doing the same thing, and we were doing bidding wars and custom orders, and we built this thing over just a few weeks, and we ended up being brought to justice only a few weeks into it, because we were caught on basically CCTV, with like a crowd of people around us holding a bidding war. And, they pulled us into the office. They tried to get us to give the money back. I, of course, refused, and which made my mother extremely proud of me. And to this day, we still have the ledger that I kept, the sort of accounting book that shows we made about $937 in profit in about 4 weeks as 9-year-old kids selling candy and soda. So that was the first real kickoff.
Yeah, awesome. So you got caught doing your so-called drug deal on camera.
Yeah. And it would not be the last time I was involved in stupid stuff as a kid anyway. So it was the beginning of my journey of illegitimate businesses on the way to legitimate ones.
Awesome. So let's talk about that. So how did you go from candy pushing, sugar pushing, mafia don to a legitimate business that you are today?
I think anybody in business, like anyone that's moderately successful, if you ask them, this isn't the first thing they did. This is like item number 12 on a list of, great ideas with poor execution. And, for me, I didn't have good influences as far as my parents weren't entrepreneurial. I didn't have that. I mean, my grandfather was a truck driver and he owned a farm. My dad worked in an equipment rental yard until his late 20s and put himself through school to become a CFO in his 40s. So, I didn't exactly have a rich history of familial wealth and easy access to mentors, or I couldn't do the Jeff Bezos turnaround and get like $100 million from a family member. Like, I didn't have that opportunity. So there were things that I tried that just frankly didn't work. And over again, it was just, I became very comfortable with failure and very comfortable with the art of learning itself. And that has become a huge portion of what I do in my main businesses now, is just really focusing on the quality of our teaching, focusing on the quality of our learning, and really stemming out our impact as much as we can by being the best possible teachers we can be.
Awesome. That's great. And so, as you said, I have seen it in my own experience, and a lot of other entrepreneurs I talk to. A lot of people go through these series of, starting something new and sort of grinding for a few years and then giving up and then starting something new. Obviously, that takes quite a bit of toll, and in order to push through it, you really need like big motivation. So, what was your motivation to push through all these challenges?
So, I mean, I've had thousands of challenges. I mean, I have challenges every day. I think that's just a part of doing what we do. You know, like I talk all the time to students, clients, people like that, where I say, like, this is not an overnight thing. And most of entrepreneurship is like waking up every morning and stubbing your toe on the bed. Like, it's never fun. It's always a surprise. And a lot of the time you knew it was there anyway, and you still feel stupid because you still hit your foot on the bed. That's just a part of it. So for me, what I always tell people is it's very easy to wander the desert for 40 years, right? And the reason that's so easy is there are 5 million competing messages in your life right now. There are people standing in front of private jets with mansions they rented and Lamborghinis they rented, and for some reason there's a lot of girls in bikinis following them around into Whole Foods and all types of stuff, and they're trying to tell you that you need to do thing X to be successful, right? And then there are other people out there, and they tell you you've got to be maybe running ads, and someone else will tell you you've got to have a podcast, and someone else will tell you you've got to be focusing on PR, and someone else will say you need to be doing cold calling. Well, if you don't have a definite North Star, none of that stuff's going to help you. You're just going to be wandering in circles in the desert. But the minute you have a North Star, the minute you have something you're following towards, it does not matter how often you do fail. You are failing towards something. You will get out of the desert a hell of a lot faster, moving 1/10 as fast as you would wandering the desert, in a dead sprint. And it's just about having that directionality to what you're doing. So for me, I failed over and over and over again. I dropped out of college at 18 after one semester to start a business. Guess who was woefully underprepared to start a business? Me. But I had a North Star the entire time. I knew where I wanted to go and what I wanted to be. And so every single thing I looked as an incremental step toward where I wanted to be, no matter how fast or how slow it was.
That's great. And so this concept of North Star, can you dive a little bit deeper here? Because some people may not really grasp what you're trying to say. So can you lay it out in simpler terms for us?
So I'm a begin with the end in mind kind of guy. I use this in, when we talked about some of the things that you're doing in the world, right? The first thing I say is you need to have a mastery goal. If someone's going to listen to this episode, for example, of your show, which by the way is wonderful. Like, I've been going through a bunch of your stuff lately, but there needs to be a definite North Star, a takeaway, a mastery goal for when they leave this. They need to be able to say, now I can blank because I learned how to blank. Okay. And your entire life can fit the now I can blank because of X format, right? This episode, the courses I build for entrepreneurs around the world, I always start by saying, forget about what you know, forget about what you want to build for a minute. What do we want the mastery goal to be? What do we want the North Star to be? Because once we know that, we can start working backwards with what the steps are. And it's much easier. The concept of a North Star will come up in your life if you are conscientious about it thousands of times, because it's just about, where am I really trying to go with this thing? once you have that, it's very hard to fail in the wrong direction.
That's true. That's true. So, one thing here again, I'm going to keep going deeper into this because I think it's a very, very important concept. Whenever we talk to entrepreneurs, especially the ones who are maybe either starting off or they don't have a lot of background in business or human psychology or whatnot. When we ask what their North Star is, generally it's something to the effect of $1 million or as you said, like a mansion or something very materialistic. So how do you reconcile that? Is that something that can be considered a true North Star, or is there something deeper here?
I think if your motivation is money, you're going to have a very, very difficult career. If it's literally all you think about and it's all you want, you are more likely to fall into the world of the false guru and you're going to resonate with the fake mansion, fake Lamborghini, fake private jet club. And that is very often a road that does not lead anywhere fantastic. And I say that from experience as well. Like my first few businesses, I would, if I was selling something for $5,000 and you had $50 in your pocket, I'd find a way to take the $50. Like I would take anything I could get. I begged, borrowed, stealed. I'd be taking you upside down by your ankles and shaking you until change fell out of your pockets. But that's not an ethical way to run a business, and it's not a long-term way to run a business. In fact, people can smell the desperation on you. When I think of a North Star, I look at what is a true motivation for why you want to do anything. Okay, so there's a great exercise I learned from Ben Hardy, and he said, put down the thing that you want. Okay, I want $1 million. Well, then ask yourself, why is that important? Well, it's important because I want to have a great lifestyle. Why is that important? Well, it's important because I want to be able to provide for my family. Why is that important? Well, as a kid, I never had yada, yada, yada. Well, why was that important? And if you go 7 steps down and you ask yourself why each component is important, you get to the root of things that you may have not have known existed at all. Like when I started, I said, I want to be a successful entrepreneur. Well, I thought it was because I wanted to have a great lifestyle, make money, travel on private jets or whatever, right? Because I was 18 and stupid. But I did that exercise and I realized that the big thing I wanted to do was I have a father, a grandfather, a heritage of people that worked their asses off and had nothing, and they gave everything to give me a better opportunity. And it is my job to create an even better opportunity for my family. And that is the motivation. Well, shit, if that's the North Star, that has nothing to do with money. That has everything to do with my family and the things that I will do for them. If that's the North Star, I can start making decisions that benefit the business, not just dollars and cents, but longer term decisions. I do things that don't make me money today because they make me a ton of money 2 years from now. Most of the great things I've done in my career were not an exchange of currency. They were an exchange of value, right? And because of that, my exchange of value has generated a hell of a career. I'm 27 years old. I have had an insanely wonderful career already. I don't think it's going to stop anytime soon. A lot of that is just about the mindset and the intention I put into everything.
Yeah, and you're so articulate as well. It's amazing what you have been able to accomplish at such a young age. So now, how? So it's easy for somebody like you to say these things and say, you ask these questions and all that, but when we talk about this to somebody who's kind of struggling right now, especially in this time, how do you extract that? How do you lead them? How do you push them to extract the real North Star? Do you think it's as easy for them to get to that point as it is for you to articulate it?
Yeah, absolutely. Because I figured mine out when I had like $2.87 in my bank account. Well, here's the thing. Like, I've been in business for 9 years. I am very much what you would consider like the 10-year overnight success person. I worked my ass off, dead broke a million times. I had false dawn after false dawn. I've been a CMO and a VP of sales. I've had equity in a startup that I built to, hilariously successful heights. And I was also ousted from that company and had my equity taken. I've had all of these amazing things happen, and I've had hilarious tragedies befall them right after. Um, it's not easy for me because, my life is great. It's everything I have is a function of having thought this way when I had nothing at all. I moved to New York when I was like 17 years old by myself from California, figured out how to do that. I got involved in selling fake IDs and all types of shit because it was the only way I could make money. I've worked 3 jobs in Manhattan to try to figure out what I wanted to do. I came back and started a company. None of that is the easy way out.
Yeah. And I think you're absolutely right. Like just understanding yourself and sort of the mindset piece plus taking action, because that's where I think people lack the drive to take action, because it's not an easy road, right?
No, the whole thing, like it drives me nuts. Okay. So this is, and I'm going to sound maybe a little arrogant here, but if you go on LinkedIn right now, type in your industry, anyone that's listening to this, type in your industry, you are going to find thousands of people that are quote unquote thought leaders. The world has enough thoughts. We don't need thoughts. You have thousands of thoughts a day. People need action leaders. If everything you do is just burying yourself in more and more thoughts, you are more likely to suffer analysis paralysis than you are to actually go do the work that's going to be the crucial thing. I think most entrepreneurs I've ever worked with, and I work with people that are just starting out, and I have worked with, Joe Polish and Damon John, all these amazing people. And every single person knows exactly what needs to be done. It's whether or not they're giving it the time or they're putting the capacity, their human capital, into the thing. And that's it. That's it. It's all a process. It's just about being an action leader in your own life.
That's great. Now, you do some amazing work and extract the information out of an entrepreneur. And I think it is, with this whole global pandemic situation, this paradigm of sharing the expertise that we already possess is going to just get bigger and bigger and bigger. So this is another aspect of what entrepreneurs they always fail to recognize their own gifts, their own expertise, and they say, that's not worth it. I need a business like Amazon. I need to start Facebook. I need to launch LinkedIn or so, whatever it is. So tell us a little bit about what you do and how is it relevant in these times, help people, get something out from their own self and bring value to the world.
Yeah, well, let's talk COVID, right? And then we also just found out, if anybody's paying attention to the news, there's a new swine flu strain that they think is going to be even worse. So let's assume that this is the foreseeable future, is what we're going through right now, right? There is no person in coaching, consulting, entrepreneurship, etc., that would look at any of this and say that this hasn't been a massive paradigm shift. So, all right, well, there are people that have made millions of dollars a year on the stage. They can't make money anymore. There are people that made millions of dollars a year coaching and consulting face to face. They cannot do that anymore. They did live events or masterminds. They cannot do it the same way. There is a shift going on. It's about taking advantage of these opportunities to not be one of the many that start doing everything 7 months from now, but to get ahead of things and really start building a foundation and build preeminence in this new digital environment. None of this stuff is new. I've been making courses and helping entrepreneurs for, let's say, my 9 years, probably 7 of those years I've been making programs. None of that's new, but the opportunity is insane right now because everyone is at home. right? People have way more screen time than they ever used to, so they have more training availability. They are looking more and more at social media and things like that where they are normally finding you, so it's easier to interact with them. Advertising is about 30 to 40% of what it cost before the pandemic. All right. So if you're starting from nothing, it's a hell of a lot cheaper to do it right now than it was 5 months ago. And, beyond that, people are bored. They're stuck at home. There's only so much Netflix and Pornhub that people can watch before they want to do something productive with their time. And a lot of people in the training business are seeing tremendous explosive growth right now because it's very hard to sit alone in a room with yourself and not think about what you wish you had done a year ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, as a business owner, or potentially as a father, as a husband, as a whatever. Right? This is a very self-reflective time for a lot of people, and you're seeing fitness courses explode. You're seeing self-improvement explode, business explode, coaching explode. I mean, there's so much opportunity in moments like this. And the only way you're going to take advantage of any of it is, again, figure out what's in line with your North Star and move toward whatever the problem is. Hiding it, avoiding everything, playing close all the time is not how businesses expand.
So that's a very you said it very well. Now I also want to talk about people who don't even realize there's an opportunity, because I've been talking to a lot of executives or a lot of CEOs. Some executives are recently. I just like last week I talked to two executives of fairly large companies, very well-known companies, and they sacrifice their own job to save their team's job because the companies are going through a lot of economic pressure, right? And when I talk to them about what are their next steps, they're just sort of saying, okay, I'm just sending thousands of resumes on the internet, and I'm hoping I will land another job. Yet when I talk to them, they have achieved humongous success for their companies, and they have tremendous talents, and it doesn't even occur to them that this could be a marketable skill and they could actually go into business for themselves. So do you run into these kind of situations, and how do you make them realize that there is another option than to just sending resumes on the internet?
Absolutely. So, I mean, for a minute ago, we were talking COVID. Let's talk about historically. Historically, teaching is the number one way of marketing anything. Education is education-based marketing. Historically, go back and look at Claude Hopkins ads in the 1920s, Robert Collier in the 50s, David Ogilvy in the 60s and 70s, Gary Halbert in the 70s and 80s and 90s. Everybody that is focused on being high-end educators, it is by far the best way to promote anything. So let's say you're a displaced executive right now, and what you do is a proven thing. You have a methodology. A great example is I'm currently working. I should be kicking off with a CEO of like one of the biggest telecom companies in Canada. Well, we're building a private personal brand for him because him educating and being giving of his talents and the things that helped him build this company as a leader and things like that, it builds a position of preeminence for him that makes other companies want to work with him. The same thing goes if you're an executive that's now displaced. If you have a system that is proven and successful, then codifying that, putting it down onto something, it's a revenue stream. So right now, while you're putting out thousands of resumes, there are thousands more people that would be willing, excited, happy to learn from you about that thing that they could bring into their business. And on the other side of it, companies love to see entrepreneurs. I mean, entrepreneur sort of programs are huge. And if you have an entrepreneurial success, now you have a huge opportunity to step into something with them. And that's a bellwether for them to know that you are somebody that doesn't get stuck in pity parties, doesn't just stop when things go wrong, is interested in building things for themselves, is a creative, is motivated, is a self-starter. These are all things that are highly beneficial, even for someone that's staying in the employee model, you know?
Yeah, that's great. And you mentioned a whole bunch of names and the dates and everything. So obviously you read a lot. So let's talk about that as well. A lot of people, they think whatever skills they have accomplished, accumulated over the years, being in a job, being in a profession, that's the end of it all. And there's nothing else beyond that, right?
Mhm.
So how do you have you, first of all, have you experienced this? Have you noticed this? And how do you counter that? How do you explain things that there is an infinite amount of knowledge out there that anybody can attain and improve their life?
Well, and I'll tell you, just being completely honest, if you're looking to be successful in anything and you have a myopic view of learning, it's going to be very hard. I mean, you have to be extremely naturally talented to be successful without ever needing to look outside of your own psyche. I mean, like I don't know anybody that ever has done that, frankly. Like my mentors, people that I look up to and aspire to reach the precipices that they've touched. They're all lifelong learners. The biggest thing that I impart at all is just this idea of being a lifelong learner, really perfecting your own art of learning. Because if you're not learning, then you're just copying everyone else. I'll tell you, most of the entrepreneurs I meet, most of the executives I meet, I work with corporations, they're all doing it. You're all copying people in your same industry. Okay, you go, he's got a nicer car, let's go copy what he does. Let's copy the way his website looks. Let's copy the way that the images work. Let's copy that headline. Let's steal that funnel. Well, if you're copying your competitors, the best you can ever do is be a twin. You will never defeat anybody. And more likely, you're missing all types of background stuff that makes those things successful. So you're going to be just a bad rep. If you're going to be a twin, you're going to be Danny DeVito in Twins. You're going to be a horrible twin, right? Like I like Danny DeVito, but the point stands. It's like it's very difficult to get ahead being a copycat. And that means you need to learn from other sources. I'll give you a great example. Jay Abraham used to, and I'm a huge Jay Abraham acolyte, but Jay Abraham used to do seminars where he would have everybody go to grocery stores and bookstores and places that had magazine racks, basically. And the challenge was to go buy a magazine that has nothing to do with what you do as an industry, and read through it and find one thing in there that could inform, teach you, change the way you do business or interact with people, and then come back to the event and teach it. You are way more likely to be able to beat your competition if you're learning from other industries, because your competitors are doing what you're doing. They're all copying each other in this race to the bottom, zero-sum nightmare marketing swirl, right? But if you can say, hey, I'm in construction, let me look at what works in real estate to drive repeat business or to drive large ticket sales. Hey, I'm in manufacturing, and I'm going to study what people in high tech do to drive volume or to cut costs or whatever. The only way to ever break out of those like absolute loggerhead blocks is to really focus on who has been there before, what can you implement, what can you take away. Like, my whole business is built around teaching, but I don't think you can be a teacher unless you're a good learner. And that's something I harp on over and over again.
Well said. Now let's get down a little bit into mechanics of all this. So let's say, the light bulb went on in somebody's head. They say, I wanna do this. I wanna jump in and market my skills. What are the next steps? What are the mechanics of doing all this stuff?
So everybody likes to talk about the sexy stuff. Okay. This is like, everybody's like, man, let's talk about sales, sales, sales. What's the script look like? How do I get appointments? I want to make this thing. What kind of cameras do I need? And first of all that stuff's completely irrelevant. It's like I've spent $100,000+ on video production for a course, and I've spent 5,000, and there's functionally zero difference in engagement, consumption, etc. between those two. Equipment doesn't matter. Knock it out of your mind completely. You can do it on Zoom for $24 for a month, and it'll be just as effective nowadays. The market's just shifted that way. So first of all, put that aside. How do I run ads, build funnels? How do I do all this stuff to market this thing? Again, mass marketing, gurufication, sell it for $7, then $27, then $97, then $197. That's over. The reason that worked was the internet gold rush of 2012, 13, 14. Ads were so cheap on Facebook that we didn't care about building a relationship with people. We knew we could just buy infinite traffic. So we could create a $10 million a year business, like $7 at a time, because we were paying nothing for the traffic. That's changed. You have Nike on Facebook ads. You have like all of these juggernauts spending billions and billions of dollars in the ad pool. They've raised the sea of noise so high that you can't do a damn thing about it. It's too expensive to play the guru model, right? As we're speaking, all those fake private plane, fake mansion, fake Lamborghini people are choking on how to really reinvigorate their businesses, because they're spending 10, 15, 20, sometimes 50 times what they used to spend when they started the business. The paradigm shifted. It's all about the relationship. The first thing that you need to do, this brings me back to it, I do not touch a damn thing at anyone's company until they've done market research. So I work with big entrepreneurs. I work with people just getting started. I work with people that have been in their industry for 30 years, 40 years. They still don't know what's going on in their prospect's mind. They have rough approximations, but they've never done the work. So what does the work look like? Well, here's what a typical scenario is. You come to me, you say, this is my course idea. I say, okay, how do you know that's what they want? Well, you're going to say, oh, I've done a bunch of sales. This is what they want, yada, yada, yada. I'm going to say, okay, you've sold a bunch. That's still a bias that you have, because there may be 30 people that bought, but they could be the outliers of the community, right? You may be fishing in a tiny pond next to an ocean because you're not aware of what people really need. So we go in and we start looking at what I call top 10s. Top 10s, yeah. So a top 10 is, what are the top 10 blogs? What are the top 10 books? What are the top 10 products? What are the top 10 events? What are the top 10 associations? What are the top 10 thought leaders? What are the top 10, let's say, forums, social media outlets, groups, etc., right? What I'm looking for is where I can fish. Right. It's not a super complicated process to go search, SaaS plus blog, SaaS plus book, SaaS plus event, SaaS plus product, SaaS plus whatever. You're just making a list of ideas. What you do after that, and this is something that if you have any interest in quantum physics, everyone knows, every piece of matter in the observable universe behaves differently when it knows it's being watched. Okay. So your surveys, your interviews, all that stuff is completely irrelevant because you are getting inherently biased answers. If quarks and protons know they're being watched and they behave differently, you can bet that your customer base is giving you different answers than they would their best friend of 20 years. How do you bypass that? Well, we go in and we look at those forums. We go on Reddit. We go on places where they're having actual conversations with people just like them, where their guard is down. And we don't ask a question to seed answers. We don't try to badger them into telling us what they think about our stuff. We are the flies on the wall. We collect hundreds of direct quotes from the target market. We categorize them in what we call empathy categories. Okay. What are they thinking? What are they doing? What are they seeing? What are they hearing? What do they say and do that is either positive or negative? What are their dreams? What are their ambitions? What are their desires? What misconceptions might they have? What are their common frustrations? What are their fears? What are stories of their past failures? We collect all of that data on every single project we touch before we ever decide what to build. And the reason we do that is in the uncovering of these hundreds of emotional quotes directly from the prospect's mouth. You and I talked about this. You are a very intelligent guy. You have, like, if we had to put your skills in a basket, there may be 100 things in there. Well, when you sit down to make a course, your bias inherently goes towards teaching the things you know you're good at. So now you'll have 100 things you're trying to teach. Well, that's hard to organize. It's hard to consume. It's hard to teach 100 things at a high level. And in reality, you'll do the research and you'll find out that there's one thing or two things in your basket of skills that could solve their entire problem set. And if you just focused on deeply doing that one or two things, you'll be infinitely more transformative as a teacher for them than you would have if you just taught everything. And that's the bias, is just to teach everything. So, go and get all those direct quotes and really climb inside the mind of your prospects. Earlier, I mentioned Robert Collier. He wrote a book called the Robert Collier Letter Book. I think like 1953. I don't know. I'm pulling that out of, somewhere. But he has this famous quote where he says, "Enter the conversation already going on in your prospect's mind." Most of our, as business owners, understanding of who we talk to on a day-to-day basis is assumptions in our own bias. You're bouncing them like light off of a reflector, off of your own biases, your own perspective, and everything. You need to abandon that and really get into the weeds and be that fly on the wall and deeply understand. Because I'll tell you, the number one thing right now, if you want to get through COVID, the number one thing right now, if you want to just transition into what the next 5 years of business looks like, is to really start focusing on true empathy, true rapport building. And you cannot do that if you're not willing to invest in understanding your buyers.
Yeah, that's true. Very true. And so it seems like a very, very well thought out process, but very involved. So a person who's starting off, what can they do? Like, do you think, how do you get started? Like, do you have something that you share with people, or do you have any resources that you can talk about where people can go and sort of get started with it?
I mean, the biggest thing you can do if you get started, like I hate the idea of giving everyone shortcuts on this, because I think everyone in their life should have to do the full process at least once. It changes the way you do your business. It's not about, do this because you want to make a course. If you're not doing the research, like there's this Japanese philosophy, I forget what it's called, but it's once a year, you should do something so unbelievably difficult and grueling and exhausting that the very nature of doing that thing and having accomplished it changes the other 364 days of the year. Right?
Is it the gold thing, Kaizen? Oh no, not Kaizen. There's a term for that. I think I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, it's like an amazing experience to realize that you knew nothing at all about an industry you've worked in for 20 years.
Yeah.
Right? I've never shown anyone finished research and had them not go, "Oh my God, like we were missing so many things." And frankly, it'll save you so much wasted time, effort, energy, money, just to not chase things that are irrelevant, to not build programs that won't sell, to not, launch products that have no interest. And it also saves your mental health. Anybody that's made a product and had it not sell at all knows how devastating that is. Like, you take it personally.
Yeah.
And my first few products did that. Before I created that I created this market research process in 2015.
Okay, cool.
All of my products before that were like total mismatches for what my market wanted. I was just making stuff I thought I knew really well. Well, that doesn't mean anything, you know? So if you're just getting started out and you want an easy way to do it, here's the easy way to do it. But I still think you're cheating, and for shame. Okay. Go on Amazon, type in your industry in the book section. Look at the top selling books on Amazon, the 1-star reviews and the 5-star reviews. 5-star reviews, I want you to look at, and I want you to identify what are the meta traits of why people like something. It could be, I like the way it was presented. It could be the tools, the tactics, the strategies were very actionable. It could also very well be, hey, a lot of these get too in the weeds. This was like, high level. It gave me the concepts, but it didn't bore the shit out of me. Okay. So like figure out what works. Then look at the 1-star reviews. What were they doing poorly? Maybe this was too long. Maybe it was too short. Maybe it was too expensive. Maybe it didn't give the value they thought they were going to get. They're going to say things like, I wish you focused more on X. These are great guidelines for what you need to be hitting. If you had to do market research in 30 minutes, I would go to Amazon.com and then I would go to Quora and I would look at what questions are being asked and I would look at the top answers.
That's amazing insight. Now, I know we are going over time here, but just quickly here, what will be the next step? So let's say they do the market research. So if you can, tell the audience so that at least they have a full picture of what comes next.
So right after you've done that, you'll know exactly what the true like big burning desire is. And I want you to look at your basket of skills and you go, okay, if this is the big problem that they need solved, what is the 1 skill or the 2 skills that I have that can actually solve this problem? What is going to create the best transformative result? That becomes your mastery goal. Because now when I look at the course, the first thing I want you to do is write down a mastery goal. Now your student can X because you taught them how to Y. You have the answer to that question because you did the research. So what we do then is I want you to draw a ladder on a piece of paper. Okay, good curriculum presupposes that everything is an ascension. Okay, this is the reason the American education system is horrible. It's episodic rather than being an ascension model. So I want you to put the mastery goal at the top. That is the absolute end. That is what happens when they climb to the top of the ladder. And at the very bottom, I want you to write principles and philosophy. These are the rules of the game that they would need. It's the mindset. It's everything. And I want you to now sit and think about if I had to work with, like, let's say I was your student, okay? And I told you I'll pay any amount of money to come sit down with me once a week for coffee. And during that time, I want you to teach me how to X. That's the mastery goal, right? What would you teach them at every coffee session? What's the first building block, basic skill they would need after philosophy and fundamentals, right? What's the first thing they would need to know how to do in order to reach that mastery goal? What's the big concept? You're going to write something there. Then I'm going to say, okay, I come back to coffee next week. What's the next big concept? And we're going to get 4 or 5, sometimes 10 concepts. That becomes what we call a curriculum ladder, right? Now, what do you go from there? And I'll try to keep this fairly short, but this is actually exactly what I do as a consultant for corporations and all types of stuff. Then I'll look at each of those rungs on the ladder, and I will break those out into ladders themselves. And I'll say, what's the mastery goal of that module? Well, I want them to take away this thing. Okay. What's the first thing they would need to know in order to get to that takeaway? What's the next thing? What's the next thing? What's the next thing? Most entrepreneurs I work with have spent 1 to 2 years trying and failing to build a program. I get most of with Muse, right? I flew to Toronto on a Sunday and I flew back on Tuesday having planned it and shot it. Like this is a process that if you do the work, it's a hell of a lot easier. It saves you a lot of time and money. So here's the last thing. If you follow those 2 steps, now what you have is a curriculum ladder and several module ladders. So you know what all the lessons would be. But the big thing everyone struggles with is, what do I make the content of these lessons? How do I present? What do I do? All I ask you to do is hit 3 learning modalities: a visual, a kinesthetic, and an auditory component. I think I've taught you this already. Now, that's because there's 3 different types of learners. There's the visual, the kinesthetic, the auditory learner. So I like to cover my bases. I like to have a component of each in every lesson I touch. Now, how do you translate that? It's a story, an exercise, and a takeaway. At Teach to Scale, we call these sets. Every lesson is a set. Now, throughout history, the way we've taught anything, the way we've communicated with each other, even cave paintings, they're all stories. Okay, if you want to build genuine rapport and connection, you need to lead with a story. It's the way of the world, right? We're programmed with our hardwiring to listen for stories. If you want to go deeper, you need to get them off of the screen for a moment. This is just basic marketing. Take them away from the screen and get them to pick up a pen and write something down, because you're creating a different layer of anchoring with your education, right? The final thing you're going to do is you're going to write down the takeaway. You want them to have a takeaway. So again, this is what is the point of the lesson. When you look at your story, the takeaway is the moral of the story, right? So I could tell you this whole story about how I went to Muse and I planned this whole thing and all these things went wrong, but we still got it done in a few days. Well, the exercise could be, I want you all to take a minute, go into your notes, pick up your pen, and I want you to write down 1 or 2 times that everything has gone wrong with the project, but you still pulled it out of the fire at the last second. Okay, I'm going to give you 30 seconds to do it. So I'll give them to do that. And then at the end, my takeaway will be the moral of the story. My takeaway will be, I'll pivot. I'll say, okay, now that you guys are back, I want to make sure that you realize how important it is for you to not get discouraged when things are going wrong, for you to not panic and stick your head in the sand, for you to not go, oh, woe is me. There's opportunities in everything that goes wrong for you to shine and find new ways of doing something that are going to both impress you and your clients. And failure is a totally common part of entrepreneurship. No one expects you to be perfect. But if you run from those moments, you'll never learn from them. And I'll cap the lesson there. Now, that lesson will take me 5 to 10 minutes. You know, it follows all the tenets of nerdy stuff like micro-learning. If you go read all of McKinsey's trend reports, it follows all the trending of many to many and one to many, et cetera. So it has all the nerdology behind it. But at the end of the day, what it's really about is it's the science of connection. It's about actually caring that people get a result. And if you can do that, I guarantee no matter what you touch, you will find success in it.
That's great. Very. Thank you so much for going into that much depth and sharing your methodology. I mean, you know, it's pretty much all your business secret sauce. So thank you so much for sharing that, and I hope people, you know, take advantage of this. You know, I was watching some of the comments, and somebody asked, "How do I start my business?" And this was at the beginning of the podcast. I just said, "Watch and learn." So I hope they got exactly what they were looking for, and this episode, as you said, like, if they apply it, they can actually start a business in a couple of months, or even sooner. So now this is the end of the interview. Now, before I let you go, can you tell us how people can reach out? And I know you have a very nice group coaching program coming up. So can you tell us a little bit about that as well?
Yeah, so there's, and I appreciate you with a nice segue. But there's 2 ways people can kind of hang out with me more. So the first is I do a free session every week called Office Hours. Come ask any questions you have around sales, marketing, course creation, content creation, whatever. It's a free session. There's no obligation. It's not weird. I'm not pitching anything. I've been doing it for about a year, and it's been some of the most fun that I've had as a teacher. And usually we'll have anywhere between like 10 and 20 people in there that are just there to get questions answered. It's an hour and a half long, every Friday, 8 a.m. Pacific. I've never missed one, so you shouldn't either. So if you guys want to be a part of that, it's www.teachtoscale.com/office-hours. I'm sure we can provide it, you know, a little bit later.
We'll put that in the show notes so that people can reach out easily.
Awesome. And then the other way is we are doing a new group coaching. I am kicking that off on Monday, the 6th, it's the day after my birthday. So if you want to give me a great gift, you guys should check that out. But the new group coaching, it's 12 weeks long. Basically, the way you're going to get into it is the way you get into anything with me. I want you to jump on a call with me personally, not some sales team and a bunch of like douchey used car salesmen. Jump on a call with me. It'll be like 40 minutes. I'm going to ask you a couple questions about your business. I'm going to give you the roadmap on how to build whatever you need to build. A lot of the time, the suggestions I'll make won't be about working with me. You'll have to do something before I would think that you're ready or whatever. But if you're a good fit, I'll tell you about what I do and how the group coaching works. If not, you can go take everything I taught you, which will be more in-depth than this call. But you'll take everything I taught you, go run off into the make money online sunset. You don't need to work with me or anything like that. But these are just services. I mean, the ethic of everything I do is about teaching. So a lot of the time that means, planting the seed now so that a few years later, maybe we're a good fit together. So I encourage you guys to jump on that call. That's teachtoscale.com/book. And if you jump on that call, you're going to be one-on-one with me. So I'm happy to give you any advice you need.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Joe, for joining me today, sharing your knowledge, and just going into the depth and being so articulate about it. So thank you so much.
No, thank you. And you're a wonderful interviewer. So all these people are lucky they get to hang out with you every week.
Thanks. Thank you.